Hello YouTube, this is Morgan, Airspeed Prime here with my next Airspeed's Korra Rewatch video. This one's going to be for K112 Endgame, the Book 1 Air finale episode. So we're finally at the end of Book 1, we'll move on to Book 2 for next time out. But yeah, I think with episode 12, I've sort of like hinted at it for the last couple of episodes. I think it's a good episode in terms of like what happens is good. It's just that it is I think one of the only episodes within Book 1 that really shows you 12 episodes wasn't enough. They needed probably one more, maybe they could have done with two more, to really complete this arc. And it kind of shows you some of the weaknesses of the format that they chose for Korra, of just trying to do much more contained arcs, and then I think leaning on the side of too few episodes when I think they should have leaned on the side of almost having too many episodes. Because I think more detail is better than just having less detail. It's better that you almost say too much, in my opinion, than say too little when it comes to stuff. Of course, there's always some things you want to keep vague, but in this case, I think there's a lot of explanation stuff that is sort of lacking come the end of the book. And especially like going into like the history of production on this show, and knowing that like initially the plan was to just do this one book. Endgame would have been the series finale for Korra, and in that case I just don't think it would have worked pretty much at all. I think the where they ended the romance sort of feels like it's in the kind of the right spot to end the show, but otherwise not really. The characters aren't developed enough. You can tell that they still have to kind of do a little bit more. They could have ended it here. I just don't think it would have been the most satisfying ending. So thankfully they chose to do more, and it makes Korra a much more complete show, that it has 3 more seasons. Because this just, in my opinion, just wouldn't have worked as a series finale all that much. But one thing about the last episode I forgot to mention was Mako's line where he kind of reacts to like Tarlok and Amon being bloodbenders by basically saying, okay, so this basically explains like the challenge of Amon. The reason he can, without even showing he's a bender, take on anyone is because he can basically redirect attacks with his mind. It helps to explain this other aspect of Amon of like, okay, he can take people's bending away with blood bending, but how does he without using his bending actually defeat those benders to get to that point? And so Mako's explanation here, they don't draw too much attention to it as like an in-depth explanation, but this is it for explaining how he's able to just dodge so perfectly so many powerful benders' attacks and basically not take any hits from them. It's because he is subtly bloodbending them. Not in a big way where they notice it, but like do a fire punch like straight at someone's face, but he subtly bloodbends it so that the aim is off. And he knows it's going to the right, so he just has to dodge a little bit further one way, and he's completely dodged it, and it makes him look like he's completely outclassing anyone, even though it's actually primarily his bloodbending and how skilled he is at keeping it subtle. And it's only possible for him because he's a psychic bloodbender. He can do it just with his mind. He doesn't need to do any sort of motion with his hands. He just subtly like moves an attack off by a degree or two, and it makes him look like an expert. So that's a good explanation for that. But this episode obviously is the first one where we start to see the cracks, I suppose, in Amon's armor when Tenzin gets the first hit in on him, because he just there's so many people attacking him, he just kind of gets overwhelmed and can't fully bloodbend everything away, and takes his first hit. We'll get into, I suppose, the other stuff about his bloodbending later on, but I think this episode has a lot of the key parts needed for a finale. It has the culmination moment for like a lot of the characters' arcs of just, Korra's kind of big moment, both fighting wise against Amon, but also kind of development wise come the end of the book. Mako, you sort of complete his romance arc within the book, but you also give him a powerful moment. I've talked about Bolin at the very start of the book, and like the main thing to look out for, even though he doesn't get a huge arc within this book, is just look at him in the early episodes, look at him here. There is growth. He becomes a much more, I suppose, courageous person. Just him running in to like defend Asami there on Naga, you know, firing rocks. That's not something he would have done in the earlier episodes, but through, I suppose, the influence of Team Avatar, Korra, his brother, even Asami, he's become like a key member of the team and now is basically a hero, and we continue that development with Bolin into the next book and onwards. So even he has a subtle arc, and then this is one of the few arcs where Asami actually, I suppose, gets a little bit of a kind of completed arc of like set up something in the earlier episode, have a big moment in episode 7, and then you give her this moment of defeating her father and, you know, more or less having to accept that for now there's nothing she can do. She just has to accept that he is a terrible father and he has to go to prison for what he's done here. And it's a tragic end. There's a lot of tragic ends for kind of families in a way in this this finale, but that's just one of them. And it points out again, I think, the problem with Asami, that she did need focus on stuff outside of just her father. And I think that's where like flashbacks involving her mother, the formation of the Equalists, would have helped to, I suppose, characterize her a little bit better. Because I think the main problem with Asami is just that she's never given really an arc on her own that's about her. It's always about her father, her father's company, or something that's just like somehow related to Asami rather than just her herself. She doesn't really get the character development that we necessarily need. Thankfully, episode 7, I think, and the decision that she made in that episode was strong enough that it kind of keeps her going as a character for a while. But I definitely would stand by that she is, I think, the weakest of the main characters and really is underdeveloped fundamentally still into the comics. But I suppose that moment with her father, it's emotional, it's powerful, it's well done, because, you know, you have them fighting in like their families, you know, the company's machinery. She knows how to pilot it because it's all fundamentally based in the same technology that's used in all of their other like machinery. And you have this father-daughter fight, and notably you have Hiroshi, his reaction to it, obviously, and Asami fighting against him is him basically, you know, giving up on ever, you know, getting her back and saying, you know, like, I now see there's no hope for you, basically, and going to effectively kill her or capture her. That's how far gone he is at this point. And it's pretty impressive that I think they managed to sort of turn him around as a character. It's where I suppose you wish they'd maybe come back to him a little bit in like book 2 or 3 to just see how he's doing in prison, rather than just have the very sudden shift that like in book 4, like 3 years later, now he's realized the errors of his ways. And I think this is for sure where they probably could have had something in book 2 or 3 where maybe you had Asami go to visit him earlier, and maybe you had the flashback about their mother and Yasuko, and use that as a way to maybe bring them back together. There was a way to make it a bigger arc over the course of the book and use it as a more effective, I think, tool to make Asami a better character. But still, the Bolin and Asami together take out Hiroshi, and you know the line, you really are a terrible father. It's meant to, I suppose, somehow relate to, I suppose, what ends up happening with the tragic tale of the Yacone family, basically, but in a slightly different way, and that this eventually has like a hopeful kind of ending. General Iroh obviously gets a big action scene with the biplane. That's a really cool sequence, you know. It's really what turned him into, I suppose, Iroh Man, with the fire flying, jumping from plane to plane, you know, blowing up bombs, you know, then smashing the plane into the Amon mask on Aang, and the little moment there, it's a nice reference that they just gave him this really, really cool, like, solo action sequence to get across how powerful he is. Again, it's a little bit unfortunate he doesn't really get too much of a focus in the seasons after this. He's primarily just used as the, like, somewhat reasonable like character who's in command of something notable, but always has to ultimately, you know, give in to whatever the person above him says. So it's like Iroh is basically just meant to be the reasonable side of like Raiko, of like Iroh will listen to Korra as the Avatar and give her a level of respect in that role, whereas Raiko won't, and so anything that Raiko is willing to give, Iroh is willing to give Korra, Raiko always kind of goes against. It's just a bit unfortunate we don't get to see him in like action scenes really after this point. I think he could have been used a little bit better. And especially I suppose in the comics right now, where they're still more or less using Iroh in the same way as just that like, we'll talk to Iroh, oh wait, Raiko's still in charge fundamentally. So there's that. Naga got a pretty cool moment. Rewatching it again, it's just like, that's a really incredible thing that Naga just did there. She blocks Bolin from getting hit by 3 grappling hooks from, you know, obviously 3 different mecha tanks. She grabs them with her mouth and just basically like moves her neck to like drag, sort of like stop or drag the mecha tanks. And I think they sort of forgot about physics a little bit here, because like, yes, a polar bear dog is a very, very strong animal, but they're 3 mecha tanks, these huge metal machines with humans inside them, and she just drags them along, like completely topples them over. That like, it's just Naga's like pure strength just like completely like knocked them over like they're nothing. It was a little bit unrealistic, and of course Avatar, it's always to some degree a bit unrealistic, but this was a bit of a like case of Avatar's always rooted to some degree in martial arts, and like if you had the ability to use firebending, like yes, you theoretically could do this. This was a bit like, okay, I get that's a powerful animal, but whoa, that was incredible what Naga just did. So there's that. I suppose we'll get to the main arc now. That's Mako and Korra confronting Amon. So immediately they try to execute the plan. Amon gives his speech. Korra comes in, calls him a liar. The big reveal, she tells everyone. He uses blood bending to take bending away. He's a water bender. You know, the equalist movement is based on a lie. She's trying to ruin the whole organization just by outing him as a bender. The shocking thing that happens here, obviously, is that Amon takes off his mask and reveals that he actually does have a scar, or so it seems. And it is this moment of like, Korra suddenly has to recalculate of like, did Tarlok just lie to me? Or what's going on here? Or did something happen later on in his life that Tarlok doesn't know about? Both Korra and Mako are taken aback by this. We as the audience, I think, are also meant to be taken aback by this, of just like, no, wait, this was all starting to make sense. The Akone stuff, the backstory from the last episode. He's not meant to have that scar. His story's not meant to be true, because we know what his story is. And then especially when he counters them attacking him by revealing that he has like Tenzin and his family, it's another moment of just like, wait, how did that happen? Unfortunately, this is a case of, as Korra says, but how? They got away. And it's just this real like, wait. What are you doing here, show? The face paint I don't have a problem with, really. The problem is how Tenzin's family was captured. They did this seemingly completely off screen, didn't show anything about this, and I don't like that. I don't like that in a very short season where you devoted a whole action scene at the end of like an episode to showing Tenzin and his family getting away, specifically showing airships pulling away from the pursuit of Ugi, to suddenly reveal that, oh yeah, I have them. It's just, it to me highlights that was probably something that they were meant to show if they had more time. That something like he sent off another airship in a different direction, he knew where they were going to go or something like that, and had people there prepared there to meet them. Something along those lines. Any explanation for how this happened. Because otherwise it's just like, how did the timing on this work like at all? I really don't get it, because the Equalists were preparing for their big defense against Iroh's forces arriving, and then you're kind of saying like, oh, and also Amon had this like secret plan to take Tenzin hostage. How did this all time out correctly? It's very like confusing to a degree, and definitely I think one of the biggest examples of just like, you're using this to be a shocking moment, but it's more of a confusing moment because nothing explains this whatsoever. Now, the action scene that actually happens here is really, really cool, and having the Air Kids there, plus, Tenzin there, helps to make it a really cool sequence, as, Korra and Mako show their firebending kind of in sequence. They free the airbenders by just kind of, their raw power, and it's a really cool fight sequence. Tenzin jumps into the action, and he gets the first hit in on Amon, as Amon's finally kind of dumped on his back, forcing him to like kind of temporarily retreat. Mako and Korra obviously flee from him, and I actually really like how the like fight scene in a way between Amon and Korra and Mako isn't just a direct fight scene, because of the nature of Amon's powers. You can't really do a direct fight. There's no way to like effectively explain how Korra and Mako have really any way to counter what Amon's power is. So I like that it is just this hide from him and hopefully get some sort of a sneak attack in if we can to take him out very, very quickly. That's the only hope that they really have against him. Mako, as he explained, as I talked about a bit from the last episode, they both know in a direct fight he can just manipulate them and stop any attack that they shoot at him from hitting them. So they have to do it by surprise, by stealth, which is what they try to do. But of course, Amon seems to be able to sense them. I suppose like his waterbending is so impressive that he's able to just kind of sense any water in the room, including within people, because he's such a powerful bloodbender. That would make sense, and that's how he's able to sense them. And yeah, like, there's a little bit of a sequence as like Mako kind of stops Amon from just immediately taking Korra's bending away, but eventually he grabs hold of both of them, and just boom, within like the first like half of the episode, Korra has her bending taken away. And it's a shocking moment, because you know that there's only like just over, like 12 minutes or so left in the episode or something like that, and it's like, this is the last episode of this season. It's potentially the last episode of the entire series at this point. What's happening here? And what are they going to do now that Korra doesn't have any bending? And it's a really cool setup, because it forces Mako to suddenly like have to be the hero in this moment, and they really get him over in this sense of how powerful he is. He grabs Korra and flees, and then the lieutenant obviously comes in to give Mako a little bit of a chance to kind of wriggle his way out of Amon's bloodbending grip. And I suppose this is where like they probably should have characterized the lieutenant a little bit better and given some backstory as to why he's the lieutenant, why he's Amon's like, I suppose, number 3 technically after Hiroshi, but like his main other fighting guy when he's not doing anything. I feel that was needed, because fundamentally like Hiroshi and the lieutenant are actually the main like loyalists, I suppose, to the Equalists. They're the ones who truly believe in the cause, because Amon obviously has, he believes in what he's doing, but obviously the hypocrisy of it all kind of creates an issue. Those two, as just non-benders and have their reasons to hate benders, I'd love to know what the lieutenant's was, because you can see how upset he is. He sees that Amon's a bender, and for him it falls apart. I believed in everything you said, I trusted you. And he calls him a traitor and goes to attack him. Basically, like he devoted his life to him, and it's all a lie. And obviously they effectively kill off the lieutenant here. It's not made exceptionally clear if that's what happens, but the sound effects of like, very clearly it seems like Amon goes heavy on the bloodbending here to more or less kind of like crush his bones and stuff like that. The problem I think with it is that the lieutenant has taken a huge beating this entire season. Like I've sort of covered it in some of the episodes. There's been at least 6 or 7 times where he's been like sent flying off a cliff, smashed into a wall, and like he's come back from these injuries or whatever. And it just feels like is that the finishing blow on this character? You sort of more or less said to us he's pretty durable and keeps coming back. Why is this what takes him out? So I'm still not entirely clear on if he's dead. I'm going to assume that he is, because this is one of the first time I think we've just seen a bloodbender out and out, like, I suppose, attempt to finish someone with bloodbending, and that seems to be the effect because they just don't come back to the lieutenant. But Amon turns around, he still has control of Korra and Mako with his bloodbending, but Mako manages to sort of move out of the bloodbending grip, get his hands into the correct position, and lightning generate into Amon and get the first, I suppose, big hit in on Amon that sends him flying backwards. And I think what really gets Mako over here is just the praise from Amon. When Amon finally does grab Mako and is about to take his bending away, he basically gives him the biggest compliment you could give a bender in the show, coming from basically one of the, like, in my opinion, I think, like, the most powerful, like, non-avatar bender in the entire universe that we've seen so far, basically. Him complimenting Mako on his talent as a bender, that is a huge, huge, huge praise. And anyone, I think Mako tends to be sort of underestimated with regards to his power level always when it comes to, like, discussions of powerful benders. But I always take it like Amon saying that you're talented, and how one of the few things they are consistent with Mako in this series is in fights they rarely just have him flat out, like, just be defeated and such. When it's his time to, like, really get into a fight, he usually comes out on top, and I think that speaks to his skill, and it's the one thing they've always been good at with Mako is keeping him as a very powerful bender. And I think because if they made him weaker, it would have lessened the impact of this. So I always think that's a huge moment. But yeah, that leads to Korra's big moment in the episode of her unlocking her airbending at this point. And obviously this is where I think explanations are very, very lacking. I feel at some point some character should have given us an explanation for why she was able to airbend despite having her bending taken away, which comes back to, I think, as I'll talk about later on, the major explanation I think that was lacking is just, I feel Katara should have explained to us what Amon did to Korra. I feel Katara shouldn't have been able to reverse what Amon did, but she, from her own healing, should be able to, like, isolate and be aware of what Amon has actually done to her. And that should give us an explanation for, okay, he takes bending away with bloodbending, but what did he do specifically? Katara, I think, should have given us that explanation, which would have explained, in my opinion, why her airbending is still active, in that Amon has never taken away an airbender's bending. And obviously we never get massive explanation on how bending works, but as I've discussed in videos on my channel before, it's my opinion that it relates to the chakras, it relates to the chakra, the chi network throughout the body, and that's what Amon is doing. That's the explanation that we were given post-show by Mike and Brian, that what he's basically doing with this technique is doing reverse healing, whereas healing tends to, like, use water to, like, channel someone's chi towards, like, a specific point in their body to, like, accelerate healing. And what Amon is doing is basically using healing in reverse, using the water in someone's body as the, like, water aspect of the healing technique, and he's kind of, like, channeling chi away, as well as, like, destroying the chi paths and connection to, like, the different chakras as he goes on. So it's my opinion that, like, Amon more or less knows the location of the different chakra points, that, like, 4 of the chakra points are the elements. So one is the air chakra, earth, fire, and so on. He knows where fire, earth, and water are, but he's never taken away an airbender's bending before, and is probably never, like, focused on someone enough to be aware of where the air chakra is. And especially with Korra, when she's never actually done any airbending before. It's not just that she can't do it at will, she's never airbent before. So so it's this weird situation where like he would look at her and see that, okay, her network, the way her kind of chi network is working is that she has the ability to bend fire, earth, and water, but her airbend, even though she's the avatar, just seems like it's gone, like it's already blocked basically, or hasn't been used. So he wouldn't, I suppose, feel the need, or potentially wasn't even aware that there was anything to actually take out there to stop her being an airbender, because he's never witnessed her do it before. So I think it's just this sort of like this one bit of knowledge that Amon is lacking with his technique, and that is the specifics around taking an airbender's bending away, which is probably what he missed out by not just doing it with like Tenzin already or something like that. And so this is the moment where she unlocks her airbending, which comes down to the fact that she's done all the training, she's sort of made her spiritual connection already, and the explanation I think we more or less have is that because of Korra's like selflessness in this moment of like jumping in at this moment to save someone she cares about, this is what unlocks her airbending, as well as what Aang explains later on, that she's hit her lowest point. She doesn't have her bending, but she's still willing to fight, and because of that, at her lowest point, she's open to a change, and so does the element that she kind of hasn't used before, and so that's her airbending. And I like that she just does very basic airbending. She knows the techniques, but is not going to just try and use the martial arts techniques that she's never really used before with actual airbending. So she's just like, okay, I'm just gonna punch him with the air. I can airbend, but I'm not gonna try and do the crazy training on the spot here. I'm just gonna blast wind at him and see what I can do. She obviously gets the kind of flurry. He tries to bloodbend her, but she very kind of quickly, as obviously empowered by this, breaks through his bloodbending grip and sends him flying into the water. And it's a weird one because it's not like this is like Korra defeating Amon in combat. She doesn't really do much damage to him as such. Like, he falls into the water a good bit and has to like obviously get himself out. So he took a pretty hefty blast, but you wouldn't say that this was any sort of a finishing blow. He was completely able to bend afterwards, and it would have been still a very tough fight for Korra and Mako, even if Amon had come back. But what defeats Amon is that he water bends. He's forced to water bend in front of everyone. The scar washes off, revealed to just be like face paint, and that's what defeats Amon. The truth coming out, a bender is the one leading the equalist movement. It just immediately falls apart. Anyone who sort of believed in it is suddenly like has their doubts. It doesn't erase all like bender non-bender conflict, but all of a sudden they realize that they've kind of been taken for a ride here, and maybe it isn't as bad as they say, because look at this person lying to us, whereas who saved us? The Avatar, who we thought was lying the entire time, and so on. So I think it's an interesting kind of end to it all, and I like that in a way they continue the arc for Amon of just like, okay, this plot is over, I've been defeated, let's try and start things again. And he just goes back to his brother, and they make the attempt to, I suppose, like their father, somehow start things again. And you can tell immediately that Tarlok is kind of like, I'm going to go along with this, but he's up to something, and it leads to obviously another super shocking moment in the series, but I think a very well done one that just adds into just the tragedy of this family, the tragedy of all those characters. Of again, Amon left not wanting to do Yakun's kind of revenge bidding. Tarlok didn't want to do that either, but they both more or less ended up doing it in some way or another, fulfilling his revenge in some way. Amon thinks he can start again, but the idea here is that I suppose Amon is basically going to become Yakun 2.0. He'll settle down for a while, but something will happen. Something will happen, and he'll find some other plan to do. And I think Tarlok as well sort of doesn't trust himself with this as well. It's like the curse of this family, having this powerful technique that they can be the center of these kind of incidents. Tarlok knows that the only way out of this, to stop all this kind of chaos basically inflicting the world, is to just get rid of both of them. And it's dark, it's emotional, but it's sort of understandable in a way, because just for the sake of the series, you sort of have to take out benders that powerful. Otherwise, it kind of diminishes almost anyone else, because the psychic bloodbenders are just here. They can come in at any time and just win a fight, unless we create these crazy situations that lead to their defeat or use the Avatar state. They had to do something just on that front, and I think they did it well to fit in with the story of just an already tragic tale for this family having to end in a very tragic way. But in a way, it's the only way to end it. And there's always a speculation of like, did Amon know? I think he did, and sort of accepted it, that like he probably would have done it again, but it took Tarlok being the one to sort of break free kind of last minute, his sort of redemption at the end of just like, for both of our sakes, knowing what we truly feel about this is what we have to do. And it's crazy, like it's this murder-suicide scene that we get, and it's shocking that it's in a Nickelodeon show, but I applaud the show so much for doing it, and just having that be a very unique end for the villain. But like we see Boomy arrive later on. It's just a quick thing. He screams, "Bad man!" Tenzin is like upset about his brother being around. Obviously, just getting across that Tenzin's easily annoyed by a lot of people, and Boomy comes across as the type of character he, yes, wouldn't get along with so much. But the result of this is that Korra's bending hasn't just like come back on its own. They go back to the healing hood in the south with Katara, and she finds out that Katara can't do anything. She can't heal her to get her bending back. She's stuck just with airbending at this point in time. And what I love about this is that it gets across this aspect of her character that we've known from the start of the series. She's the Avatar. She knows she's the Avatar. She wants to be the Avatar. Being the Avatar is her life. She's known about it since she was so young. Has been training for this and wanting this her entire life. And so, like, three quarters of kind of being the Avatar being taken away from her. Her entire life up to then, more or less. The training and those elements being taken away from her. That's a huge thing to be taken away from her. And especially, like, the pressure on her as the Avatar to suddenly, like, lose part of what it means to be the Avatar. It's this sort of huge failure moment, but like her entire life kind of like up in the air. Like the fact that she says to Mako that like, I'm not the Avatar anymore, and kind of expects to kind of be just ignored by everyone in a way because she's not that person anymore. It speaks to just how impactful like her bending is to her as a character, and why it's such an upsetting thing for her. Why we have her kind of basically leave and abandon this moment of Mako confessing to her that he loves her, which is kind of what she's wanted this entire book. And you can tell it hits her in that, like, the acting from Janet Varney is really good here, in that she's obviously extremely upset about her bending, but you can tell that Mako saying this changes those emotions in a way, and she's like, oh, but she has to just like get away from this. This is not the time to have this happy moment, because what her life has been up to now has sort of been taken away from her. And so she, like, her abandoning this moment that she's always wanted serves as an excellent way to just show that this is a huge thing that has happened to her. This is not just like, you know, one thing being taken away from someone. This is a key aspect of who she is lost to her now, and it's going to take a long time for her to get over this. And she comes to the edge of the cliff. I never bought into the whole like, oh, they're Korra contemplating suicide kind of theory that some people have, we've seen over the course of this book that when Korra's been upset about things, she tends to kind of go to like the kind of edge of things, kind of just like sit there and stare off into the kind of the ocean, the expanse. That's just kind of like her go-to thing. I suppose it sort of feels like a kind of artifact of like sort of growing up alone without any friends, that like whenever she had to deal with stuff, it was always to a degree on her own, so she'd like deal with it in that way by just kind of looking out into the emptiness in a way. But I love the setup for this scene, that like just an airbender appears behind her, and it's like, okay, it's Tenzin, because Tenzin just appeared to talk to Mako, but the way Tenzin was talking, it was like he's also not going to go to talk to Korra. So she immediately is just like, go away, Tenzin. And then you hear this different voice, and you know immediately what it is. It's Aang. The excitement on Korra's face, you know, him just saying, like, you finally collected with your spiritual self. When you hit your lowest point, you know, you're open to the greatest change. It's a cool piece of advice that helps to explain some of what's happened here. Not perfectly, but good enough. And it's just such a big moment of just Korra finally like fully connecting with the past avatars. And I've always liked it because it works very well, I think, with the book 2 finale of like, here's this crazy bad situation that Korra's in. She's lost, you know, most of her bending elements. How's she going to get out of this mess? But she's made the spiritual connection finally to her past lives. And just by unlocking that, you unlock solutions to things. You unlock this extra power, this extra wisdom, and you have these new things that because you've become spiritual. And so Korra gaining that insight gives her this ability to basically solve some of the problems she's encountered. One of them being that the past avatars have known energy bending, and so they give her her bending back. And I suppose this is where I think some people get confused about. I don't think enough people know about the explanation for Amon's ability, in that it's not like when it's called like giving someone their bending back, it's not like the line turtles as it's explained in book 2. It's not them just giving the full element to someone. It's basically repairing their kind of like chi network and kind of chakra points. That's effectively what's happening here. It's using energy bending to like undo the damage that Amon did of like blocking someone's chakra points or cutting them off. And it makes sense that energy bending, chi, is the same thing. Like energy bending is directly manipulating someone's chi, so some sort of a like healing ability relating to that makes sense. It's obviously not explained particularly well, but that's the explanation here. That Korra just heals Lin's kind of chakra network to allow her to bend again. She doesn't re-grant Lin the ability to earthbend again. She still has it, it's just she can't move her energy in a way to actually bend again. That's what it does. This isn't the same as the energy bending's ability to just take someone's bending away. That to me I have interpreted as literally removing the ability that the line turtle granted. I don't think this ability here is meant to be interpreted as this is the exact same ability that the line turtles have. I still believe that the line turtles are the only ones who can just make a non-bender a bender, whereas this is just repairing, as someone who already is a bender, repairing their network to allow them to bend again. That's my interpretation of it. In the sense of like, if Aang used this ability on himself just before the Sozin's Comet finale, he would have basically unlocked the Avatar state for himself, because he would have been repairing his own chi network, which was actually repaired by him hitting the wall and releasing the blockage that was there. If Aang used this technique on himself there, it would have solved that problem going into the fight with Ozai. So there's that. She gets her Avatar kind of state moment. It's cool. Especially cool because they bring the Avatar state music back. It's her first time using the Avatar state. They haven't even given her like a defense mechanism move. They just kind of like, here it is. Then they kind of ended, I think, on the good note of just, you know, her and Mako getting together. She says the I love you back to him. And it feels like, okay, stability at last. We've got to the couple we've kind of been waiting for the entire time. now can we really kind of move on from the drama? No. Book 2 happens and it's all messed up. We'll get to that, of course, in the upcoming episodes, but I like it here. It makes sense to end it, I think, on this point, because I do think a lot of Book 1 was set up towards Mako and Korra's relationship, and so ending on this moment, and I think both of them saying I love you, I think is something that the writers regret. I think they really, really do regret committing to this to the level that they did, because them having to take it back in Book 2 just feels very, very awkward, because they went overboard here and then had to pull it back. Like, you look at the Book 1 finale and it feels like, okay, your shipping is done for like the entire show. Then you look at Book 4 and it's just like, how on earth did we get to these ships? So the shipping's a mess in Korra. Thankfully, they fix it more or less, but it's still like a problem. It's not great. Lin gets her bending back, and ending it on the note of just Tenzin like respectfully referring to Korra as Avatar Korra. It's a really great moment because she has proved herself here. She came here and no one respected her at all. And she gets respect from at least some people here. Lin, Tenzin, her friends. It becomes sort of like a plot over the course of like the entire series basically is who does and does not give the Avatar respect, and Korra sort of struggle with that. But Book 1, I think it's overall excellent. Like, you have to look back at these episodes. Episode 1, very strong opening episode. Episode 3 is a very notable episode to like properly introduce Amon. 4, the emotion of that episode, what they do to sort of really get the character arc going is well done. Episode 6 is a very strong mid-season finale, a lot of action. 7 is Asami's best episode in the entire series. 8, I think, is up there with the best episodes of Korra, and is, I think, within a shout within like best episodes of Avatar overall as well. 9 is a solid episode with the flashback and some of the other shocking things they do there. 10, and again, one of Book 1's best episode, and I think is within the debate for some of Korra's best episodes. 11 has one of the best sequences in Korra overall, and is just a solid episode. This episode 12 is good. It just has problems, and I think I would say a lot of Book 1's problems come back to this. Lack of explanation of like Amon's techniques, lack of explanation for like this and that. They just run out of time before they can really bring it to an end in the way that they, I think, properly need to. I think you probably could have given Asami a little bit more of an epilogue type thing to just finish what's up with her father. Maybe start a little bit of an arc of her seeing her go into prison and something happening there, a little turn from Hiroshi or a hint at something. There was a way to, I think, do it better, where I think clearly the one weakness of like Book 1 is that like it's the least connected to everything else. They just do a fairly big time skip between like Book 1 and the other books, and it doesn't really seem to link in as much. Whereas like Book 2 sort of transitions directly into 3, 3 transitions into 4, even though there's a big time skip, but it's clear why that happens. Book 1 and 2 though, it's just this incident ends, 6 months passes, let's start this. There's no real transfer of anything as such. So to me, Book 1 is very, very good. I think it's it's not the most underrated, but I think it is an underrated book of Korra. I think people tend to lump Book 1 and 2 together as just like, oh, Korra got much better in the later seasons. I'd actually say I actually still maintain that Book 1 and 2 are the stronger books of Korra, and it's actually Book 3 and 4 where some of the weaknesses come in and the flaws of the format that they have really start to become apparent. But yeah, that's my thoughts on episode 12 here, Endgame, and Book 1. In the comments, let me know what your thoughts were on this finale episode. Do you think it has those kind of weaknesses of not explaining enough? And just what are your thoughts on Book 1 overall, now that we've kind of finished going through this with the rewatch? But yeah, I'll probably do the first Book 2 rewatch episode for Rebel Spirit Monday, hopefully. But yeah, that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.